Thank you for coming to another Reef Talk. I see so many familiar faces here in the audience. My name is Kater Heine. I'm with Malama Kai Foundation. We are a not-for-profit with our goal being thoughtful stewardship of coastal waters. If you didn't know, Malama Kai was established in 1991 to enhance the marine nearshore ecosystem and coastal protection throughout Hawaii through education, stewardship, community projects. We are a not-for-profit, so we rely on donations. So I'm going to be going heavy on the donation. Please donate if you can. I know we have some very generous donors in our audience and have for many years. We work with the Davies Mooring Buoy program, which is an extensive program and statewide that is one of the easiest ways you can protect the coral reef. There's lots of ways to protect corals, but in my opinion, not dropping anchors or lines on corals is one of the easiest immediate ways of protecting coral. And I work with the Ridge to Reef education program, so that's taking local middle school students out of the classroom and taking them Mauka to Makai, teaching them about the Ahupua'a systems and giving them a sense of place. And we're working them in usually invasive species removal, native planting, and just really getting these kids out of the classroom, off their technology, no phones allowed, and giving them that connection to nature. And as well as these Reef Talks, where we bring in guest lectures. And so these are monthly marine science presentations, started over 20 years ago. Some of you were here long enough to know that there's been a series of stops and goes, but the Reef Talks, the whole goal is to bring the community together and give you guys a sense of place to be together, talk story, and learn about what's going on. As well as, it's usually third or fourth Thursday, but that can vary, so make sure you put your name on the sign-up sheet. And I'll be emailing the next Reef Talks. We are going to have a break in December. Just generally, it's hard to get people in here late December and start fresh in January with Reef Talks. And then we want to also thank ASU, Arizona State University, and Terraformation for this incredible space that we get to use. And we have a tax ID number for donations, QR codes, as well as I have laminated information back there. And tonight I am so pleased to have Maria back on island, and she'll be talking to us about large whale resource protection, and she's a monitoring specialist and whale disentanglement. So we'll be learning what to do this time of year as our kohola are coming back to the islands. It's perfect timing on if you see something, what to do. And she is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really happy to be able to bring her here. When she comes to Big Island, I always grab her. So I'll let her go ahead and start with her large whale entanglement response, past, present, and future. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. I am going to try and convey everything that I would like to out of these slides. I traveled from Perth 2 days ago straight to here, and I've been on the water all day today doing a training. So not everything is firing how I want it to fire, but I'm going to do my best. So I appreciate you all for coming. Like Kater said, I worked for the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary based on Maui, but used to be here in Kona for about 15 years. Some of you may recognize me. I worked for Captain Zodiac for many, many years on the water. But got my degree at University of Hawaii on the other side of the island, started working out on ecotourism boats, started bouncing back and forth to Alaska, Hawaii, British Columbia, Costa Rica, and came across a bunch of entangled whales while I was out there. Made me realize that this was a much bigger issue than I knew, and I looked up how to get trained in disentanglement. That took me to Provincetown, Massachusetts. Anyone from the Cape Cod, New England area? Oh, I got one, all right. Well, they have a lot of animals, and they have a lot of animals that get entangled up there, so you get experience quickly. So I've worked with North Atlantic right whales, humpbacks, fins, minkies, even disentangled mola mola, which I didn't even know ocean sunfish could become entangled. Yeah, got a lot of experience, leatherback turtles as well, and then came back here to Hawaii to the warmer weather again, and started doing disentanglement here for the state, the feds. So for my presentation, I'm going to go over a little bit about bycatch and gear configuration. So when I'm talking later on in the presentation about an inline or something like that, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Give you a worldwide entanglement overview, talk about the history of disentanglement, how we go about response efforts. So I'm going to walk you through that, show you videos and photos, and then talk about mitigation efforts going forward, and hopefully have some time for questions before I fall asleep. All right, so diving into bycatch. Does anyone know what bycatch is, first and foremost? Go ahead and shout it out.
Stuff you caught you didn't want to catch.
Exactly, so that's perfect. So stuff you didn't want to catch. What I like to highlight is fixed gear. That's going to be your pots, traps, and trawls. That's with lobster and crab gear. And I highlight this because this is commonly what we see on entangled animals, okay? And what you see up by the boat is going to be a high flyer or a pickup buoy. That line coming down to the seafloor is called an end line, okay? Then depending on what the fisherman likes to fish, it could be a single pot, just one trap on the seafloor, or multiple pots connected to another end line, okay? It can be 10, 20, 30 pot trawls, just depending on what that fisherman fishes. Now, this is what a single pot would look like. So you have the buoy on the sea surface, inline going down, pot on the sea floor. When animals are swimming along, they can, if they're feeding, the line can get trapped in their mouth, in their baleen, around their pectoral fins, around their flukes. The fluke is a catch point. And they can even get caught in the lines in between the pots. And unfortunately, when that happens, the pots are then squeezed on either side of the face. Now, to give you an idea of the fishing pressure that these animals see, this is a photo that we took off Maine, okay? And I'm gonna mark every buoy with an inline going down to the seafloor with a yellow dot.
Oh.
So this is one photo, and this continues a lot of places around the US and internationally. Unfortunately, where humans feed and whales feed tend to be the same area, okay? So while I talk a lot about fishing gear, because that's what we see a lot, it's anything human-made in the water column that can entangle an animal, will entangle an animal, okay? I also highlight derelict gear, fads, moorings, because we do see a lot of that as well. This photo is from an animal in Alaska on a boat that I used to work on. Open mouth feeding underneath the boat, shut its mouth on the anchor chain and spun. So that's the eyeball up in the upper right. That's the anchor chain with a little knot in it after it spun. Unfortunately, to get that out, we had to cut at the windlass, which was at the boat, and let the animal hopefully spin out of it. It sunk and was never seen. So, this is a photo of a case that we had a couple of years ago off Maui. And when you get animals that have a lot of weight underneath them, they tend to be swimming very quickly because they're trying to do something that we call flying the gear. They don't want it to drag along the bottom. This was 700 pounds of brake rotors that someone put in the water as an illegal fad. Okay? The animal unfortunately picked it up here in Hawaii and was trying to get rid of it or not have it drag on the bottom. And this was right off Oluwalu on Maui.
We said as an
Illegal fad, fishing aggregate device.
Oh.
So if you all have been offshore and seen those big yellow buoys that the state puts in, those are fishing aggregate devices. A lot of people want to have their own fishing aggregate device and not tell anyone else where those are. So that will happen. We see that a lot out here in Hawaii, the illegal fads. And just because I'm talking about large whales, this affects all marine species. So I've disentangled a lot of leatherback turtles out east. This is a boat mooring that I got entangled in, and then the tide went out, unfortunately. So I'm gonna dive right into the worldwide entanglement overview, give you guys kind of a broader picture. So the entanglement threat, how many whales does entanglement affect? And I will say it varies globally, but we are able to study these animals from year to year and look at scarring rates. So if you look at these photos up here, you see those white scars on their body, that's from interaction with something human-made in the water column, okay? We can look how their bodies change from year to year and get an understanding of how many animals are encountering gear. Out here in Hawaii, it ranges around 20%, okay? The Atlantic, like northeast off Cape Cod, that ranges around 90%, okay? And 10 to 25% of animals acquire new wounds every year. That's how often they're encountering these things. Now, when and where does this occur? Again, anywhere where they're gonna overlap with things that we have made. When they're feeding, migrating, breeding, it could be Alaska, Hawaii, North Atlantic. I was just in Australia, and I had just got there for a conference, and my friend who does disentanglement in Western Australia, he's like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was like, well, hopefully sleeping. And he was like, we have a entangled southern right whale. And let me tell you, I hate right whales. They are very hard to work on, and I'll explain it later on in the presentation. Unfortunately, that animal was never seen again, but I was put on standby day one when I got to Australia. Because it's just a problem everywhere, it's not just here in the US. Now, how can entanglement kill a whale? Many ways. I'm going to try and go through these quickly, and the presentation gets better, I promise. Immediately drowning, this usually happens with gill net, especially when it's set towards the sea floor. They can't lift it up to the surface and drown. Long-term starvation, so this is a very pitted whale. That should be robust. That orange coloration is whale lice or cyanids. You only really see that in a very unhealthy whale. Chronic infection, we usually see this when animals have been entangled for multiple months or years. It cuts into them. So that's an aerial footage or photo from one of our aerial surveys on the East Coast. Whale had been entangled for a couple of years. That fluke is necrotic and falling off. And then trauma and bleeding out, and we see this with young animals with a tight entanglement when they grow into their entanglement, unfortunately. This is a question that I get all too often out at bars and things. Why do you care? It always comes to a shock to me, but obviously for to improve the welfare of an individual animal. More importantly, some species, this is a problem where the mortality rate is exceeding the birthing rate, especially North Atlantic right whales. Has anyone ever seen a right whale? Yeah, you, because you're from the Northeast. There's only about 300 left, okay? And in 2017, we lost 17 of them to entanglement and ship strike in that 1 year alone. Each case, we are able to understand the problem a little better, where this gear is coming from, how they're picking it up, and then of course, public safety, preventing ad hoc responses. So that is a member of the public trying to cut an animal free. We lost a colleague and a friend, Joe Hallett, to a right whale in 2017. So even trained responders have been doing this for a while. This is very dangerous work. There was a member of the public that jumped in with a leatherback turtle off Virginia several years ago to try and disentangle it. The turtle smacked him in the head and unfortunately he drowned. So very, very dangerous. I'm going to be giving you all plenty of numbers to call if you ever come across an entangled whale. We've been out doing trainings today with our teams here off Kona, and we can get responders there very, very quickly. Okay. This is a fun case, this photo. So this was an illegal fad that people had put internet cable on. So if you look at that, that's actually internet cable that's embedded in the gum line of that animal. It's already kind of necrotic a little bit, and we weren't able to get all the gear off. We were able to trim it with bolt cutters, and unfortunately the animal swam off still with that embedded, and we thought we'd never see that animal again. This was 2018, that photo. Saw off Maui with a calf this year. So able to get a lot of that drag off, and then its body was able to push it out. So that's a happy story. So entanglement response, going to dive into this, so give you a little bit of background. So in the US, entanglement response began in 1984 with the Center for Coastal Studies in Provincetown, Massachusetts. Since then, they have kind of taken the charge with training of teams domestically and internationally. So when I was interested in disentanglement, that's where I found I could go and be trained, and I worked with them for 5 years. Now, CCS and NMFS, National Marine Fisheries Service, teamed up to form the Atlantic Large Whale Disentanglement Network, formally in 1996, because they were getting tons of calls now about entangled animals in that area. So they figured out the safety and priorities of entanglement response, who should be trained, the locations of these teams, and the levels of responders, and I'll talk about that here shortly. If any of you have ever been to one of Ed's talks, he is the regional coordinator here in Hawaii. My colleague, still here, but he and David Matilla started the Hawaii effort in 2002. Okay. So the levels of responders, when you start to be trained, levels 1 through 5. So level 1, pretty much after this presentation, I will dub you on the way out a level 1 responder, okay? If you know who to call and what to look for, you are a level 1. Level 2 is you do an on-water training with us. Cater joined us today for on-water training, and we have one of our responders in the back, Marco. Level 3 is you're gonna start working on the inflatable with us, okay? And I'm gonna dive into the inflatable. It's a smaller boat that we work on the whales. Level 4, you can lead a disentanglement on any animal except a right whale. Level 5, the only difference is it includes a right whale, okay? And they make that delineation because right whales are different than any other whale. It's like working on a freight train and they can turn on a dime, okay? They're very reactive, and unfortunately, like I mentioned, we lost Joe in 2017. We almost lost another colleague this summer to a right whale. Very dangerous to work on. I'm a level 4. I've led disentanglement events on probably like 90 cases now. And if I wanted to be a level 5, I'd probably have to spend about 10 more years out east, okay? I'm not going to spend 10 more New England winters. And we don't have right whales out here, so I don't need it. But the response priorities that CCS and NEPS came up with was first and foremost human safety, then whale safety, and then documentation. It's in our permit that we have to document because that's how we learn and follow up. It is also in my permit that if human safety is compromised, I can let that whale swim away from me and pass, okay? First and foremost, everyone comes home, right? Unfortunately, we see a lot of this, okay? We had a couple close calls on the East Coast this summer. So what's involved in response? Many things, I'm gonna break it down, but first, entanglement detection and reporting. That's where a lot of you all come in, okay? Standing by, again, where you all come in. Then we have the rapid first response, verification, assessment, disentanglement, and documentation and follow-up. So entanglement detection and reporting. Entanglements can be very hard to detect. We have been on the water doing research, taking photos of animals, and then we get back to the office and we're like, oh, that animal was entangled. So even for us, it can be very, very difficult. Obvious things are gonna be gear trailing over the body, injuries, skinny, poor body condition, like that animal off to the left has all the indicators of an entanglement. This animal off to the right, you may not see gear on the surface, but that's what we call a peanut head, big head, little body. It warrants a second look. Okay, the animal's a little skinny, something's going on, and there could be weight below it. So this is an obvious entanglement. You have a lot of gear streaming on this whale on the surface of the water. This is what's going on below the water. So this is an actual case that we've kind of, put on here. Something not as easy to detect is an animal laying by the gear. Okay, they could just be logging, resting. And animals will do this a lot, right? They're just resting on the surface. But if they start to swim, the buoy goes down, starts to go with them, then you know something's up. We had a mom and calf last year. The calf was very interested in a mooring ball off Kaanapali. I probably got 200 calls on that darn calf, okay? Not entangled, just wanted to play with the darn buoy, okay? My partner during dinner, I was like, sorry, gotta go. Gotta run. Just having to deal with these calls because it was right in front of all the hotels. Now standing by, this is huge. So when I get a call and we've verified that it's entangled, they've told me what we're looking at, which direction the animal's going, the first thing I say is, can you stand by? Can you stay with the animal? Because it is very easy to lose these animals when they're entangled and kind of swimming a little more frantically. If they're not able to, say, they have tours on the boat that need to be at the airport, I'll say, can you pass it off to another boat? If not, I'm gonna try and call Coast Guard to get out there, or someone to go and stand by the animal until myself or Ed can get over here to help out. Also, something I have to mention, because I'm sure a lot of you have boats in here, never get directly behind the animal, okay? Even though you see gear on the surface, there could be a lot more. And we've had a couple boats get entangled in the gear that's entangled on the animal, okay? So never get behind it, stay more than 100 yards away, stay off to the sides, okay? Now, here's where we get to go through the fun videos, and I'm gonna try and walk you all through a response, okay? I didn't bring any gear with me today, but when we're trying to start working on the animal, we're gonna establish a control line, okay? That's a grapple, I think it weighs 15 pounds. And we're throwing that over the entangling gear of the animal, pulling it towards us and snubbing the entangling gear in those tines, okay? Then what we're gonna do is let the animal swim away from us, pulling the shotted line that's attached to it and the buoy. We're essentially marking the animal. We're adding flotation to it. So that's what you're seeing looping over and over again on this side. This is what it'll look like once the control line is on, okay? I'll show you a couple videos of that. So this is a video from Cape Cod Bay in 2017. A whale watch boat stood by for us. You can see we're all bundled up. So I have the grapple in my right hand, I have the shotted line in my left, and I'm looking down to make sure that line is in front of my feet, okay? If at any point I become entangled in that line, that's that, okay? So we're always looking down, making sure that's in front. The person working my buoy is also gonna make sure that line stays outside of the boat, okay? So we're coming up, whale's moving very slowly. This was a very kind entangled whale. Gonna throw the grapple and attach it onto the gear. At this point, we're shouting out colors, we're shouting out what we're seeing. Grapple throw. There's the whale, bling, done. Now, they're not always that calm. This is here off Maui. Sometimes when you're getting the grapple in there, this is what they're doing. Not always as easy. You don't always get it on the first throw. But you have about 2 good approaches to an animal before it learns your behavior and it changes its, okay? So that's why when we ask people to stand by, we ask them to give the animal plenty of room because we don't want to burn those 2 approaches before we get there, okay? Here's another video off Maui. So watch the bucket down here in the bottom right once that grapple's attached to the animal. Watch how fast that line pays out. So we have a very short amount of time, if anything gets entangled in that, to make a cut. We all have safety knives on our life vests to be able to do that. And that's a telemetry buoy that I'll be talking about here shortly. This is a shot from a drone. This was out east, so I'm throwing the grapple. Bob's working my buoy. Animals coming up. We could not see this animal. The drone operator was actually calling on the radio where it was. It looks nice and calm, but just the lighting, everything was very harsh to see at water level. So he's saying animal comes up, getting ready to throw, and then it's going to attach onto that line, and we're going to let the buoy pay out, and the animal's going to take it with it. There goes buoy. Now ideally, once we've established that control line, that's when we're going to start kegging the animal, adding more flotation to keep it at the surface, okay? If it's not at the surface, we can't work on it. So this is the same thing the whalers did. We're just trying to save the animal rather than kill it, okay? Now there are 2 types of free-swimming animal, or 2 types of entangled animals, free-swimming and anchored. Anchored means they cannot carry the gear anymore. They are just stuck in place and trying to breathe. So this is often how close we are to the anchored animals. In this case, we were in New York Harbor, beginning of COVID, and we were trying to float the animal's tail because all the gear was on its tail. So we were adding the kegging buoys to get the tail up to the surface so we could work on it. Unfortunately, with all our kegging buoys, we could not get it up, and we had to crane the animal's tail to the surface, which is not ideal. You never want to do that. But we had to do that because there's 4,000 pounds of gear on it. And there was no amount of kegging buoys that were going to get that tail to the surface. Here's that same animal. This is just a blooper. I'm about to get snotted in the face. Right about there. Yep, there it is. Doesn't smell good, I promise you that. Now free-swimming animals, sometimes when you're trying to slow them down and keg them, this is what it'll look like. Ideally, you don't have the engine in the water, but if they're running too hard, you just have to clip in a kegging buoy, throw it over, and hightail it out of there until they slow down, okay? Again, just trying to tire them out. Now, once they've slowed down, that's when you're gonna start pulling up the line. So this is the Nantucket sleigh ride. We don't have the engine in the water, we are being towed by the whale, and we're gonna try and pull up and get closer to it so then we can start making cuts. So this video, one of our helmet cams, is showing kegging and pulling up at the same time. So the animal's towing us, there's no engine in the water at this point. And you can see how hard it is to sometimes get close to that animal. I think we were going about 10 knots here. And when the animal's at the surface, that's when you get the most slack. So see, animal's up, we pull, 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 pull. Get closer to it. Bob's bending the line over the bow because that gives you a pinch point. The animal's tugging against the inflatable, not your body. Clip it in. And then you're just going to kind of keep doing that until you run out of buoys, and then you're going to grab the ones from the back and leapfrog them forward. Because the closer you get that flotation to the animal, the harder it is for that animal to dive. Okay? Sometimes you're on the inflatable for 10, 12 hours doing this. Okay? It can take that long. Now this is a place you don't want to be when you're kegging. That's when you pee yourself a little. And oftentimes animals will react to the drag because that's kind of reining them in, right? It's tugging on the things that are hurting them. So they'll react like that. And in that case, what we're going to do is back all the way down the line, get away from the animal, let it react to that drag, calm down, and then we'll start moving up again. In the case of this animal, it never calmed down that day, so we attached a telemetry tag, came back the next day, and it was completely calm. So sometimes they'll calm down in 5 minutes, sometimes they'll calm down in 5 hours. You just never know. So once they are kegged, they're slowed down, that's when we cut and release, and we use very long poles, extendable poles with specialized knives on the end of them to make cuts, okay? We want to extend our reach and stay as far away from the animal as possible. So this is I'll show you a couple videos anchored and free swimming animals. So this was the New York Harbor whale. We were just trying to feel for anything and make some cuts, and we were getting some buoys up. Usually for anchored animals, we like to put our head in the water, and the person with their head in the water will just guide the knife onto the line and then gurgle, and the person holding the pole will make the cut. Okay? I don't know if anyone's been to New York Harbor, but you can't see your hand in front of your face. Okay? You're definitely not going to see 40 feet down to that tail. So we were hoping, but it didn't work. So this is another case where out east we have a population of about 1,300 animals. We know all of them; they're all named. Okay, it's a little different than here. This animal we knew, two-year-old animal, wasn't in the best condition, and we didn't want to pull the line out of its mouth. So this was right through the mouth. We've already cut off the pot, so there's a bitter end here in the water, and we decided that we were going to make an asymmetrical cut on that line. So naturally, the next time the animal opened its mouth to feed, that would just pull out, okay? If you try and rip it out through kegging buoys, it could open the gum line and a spot for infection could enter, okay? So I'll play this again, just so you guys can see. So I'm in the bow, Ev's, we're on this for 6 hours now. This animal would only turn right, okay? We wanted it to turn left because there was a splice in the line that we didn't want going through the baleen or the mouth. Okay, a splice is like a bigger section of line. So we were waiting for this animal to turn left to cut forward of that splice. Okay, so right here you can see I can give it a tug and kind of testing it a little bit, and the animal gets swishy. That's a really hissy animal. And then it turned left, and I immediately dropped down so Ev could cut in front of those kind of bulky parts in that line. Okay. After we made that cut, we let the animal swim off. We saw it a week later, gear completely gone. Okay. So sometimes knowing the animal is great because then you can make a decision based on that. Out here in Hawaii, we use a thing called Happy Whale. If we can get the fluke ID, we can submit it to Happy Whale, and sometimes we can get the information of that animal based on that. It's an AI tool. This is another view of a cut on the fly. So again, we kind of use the animal to guide it towards the line, make that cut. So one cut made, then you just go back and keep doing that until the animal's free. This is a cool tool. I wish I had it with me, but this is called a cutting grapple. So that grapple that you saw earlier, this has knives fashioned on the inside of those tines. So if we can't get close to the animal, we can throw a cutting grapple. So this is on a right whale. You can see the cutting grapple is now working. It's not cutting through the line yet because it's thicker line. And I'm looking down to make sure there's no line around our feet. And right here, I'm about to put all my body weight on this buoy because I'm not a small person. And I was like, if I put my body weight on it, it could hopefully cut, which it did. You saw it popped, and now I'm pulling it back in. If it didn't make the cut, I was just gonna let the buoy go, right? Then the drag of the buoy will cut through in 30 seconds, 5 minutes, and then we'll just go pick up the buoy in the grapple. So you can see here, pulling it up. And I think we got like 400 yards of snow crab deer, just with that one cut. And then you'll just keep going back and doing that again. This is another video from out east showing the cutting grapple. This was a day super windy, super choppy. It doesn't even look that bad because it's using a GoPro and never looks horrible on a GoPro. But you can see Bob's laughing at me because I just got splashed and I'm about to take another one to the kisser here in just a second. And we're both just like, what are we doing out here? There it is. But in this case, using the cutting grapple, and the animal has a single pot through the mouth, and the buoy comes up over the head and around the dorsal fin, and we know if we just cut off the buoy, the pot and the weight of the pot is going to pull that line out of the animal's mouth, because right now it has kind of weight and flotation on both sides. So animal's going to come up, and in this type of weather you can't really feel the cut being made. Normally you can feel it, like you're like, oh, I just made the cut. So I'm going to throw, and I actually make the cut on the first throw, but since I can't feel it and the animal was still up, we do something called a quick recovery, because this may be the only 2 throws you get on this animal, right? So throw's coming here shortly. You can see animal laying there, buoy's up over its head, line's coming around, and we throw it over the back to pull it towards us to hope we grab the line. So I did grab the line right about here because the buoy goes slack. Did you see it just pop? But I couldn't feel that. So quickly we grab it again, and since the animal's still there, I throw again, okay? And we're kind of jigging for it, trying to see if we feel it. But the cut was already made, the animal started swimming off, and the pot just pulled it out of its mouth. But if the animal's there, you have the opportunity, go again, because you may not get that opportunity. Ooh, this is one of my favorite tools. So this is something called the gobbler guillotine, or broadhead cutter. If anyone's a hunter, you will know this for small game. But we said if it can cut a head off a turkey, it can definitely cut a line off of a whale. So we tested it on several carcasses that had line on it, and we settled on one gobbler guillotine that worked better than the others. And this is only used in certain cases where human safety is compromised and the line is under tension. Okay, it has to be a very taut line, because if you just nick it with these razor blades, it will explode off. If it's loose, it's not going to work. Okay, so I think I have a couple videos in here for you. So this is a tight wrap on our right whale's head, and you shoot it again, nick it, it'll explode off. So he actually hit it on that one, which is a great shot. This video is a newer video of a humpback whale calf embedded line. So we were trying to get that dart in there about 2-3 inches to cut that line. So you're going to see Bob's preparing, I'm calling it out for him to tell him when the animal's coming up, and you're going to see a humpback whale calf that looks like it has a necklace around it. And that's actually embedded.
It's coming up.
Jeez.
Animal free.
So the dart actually penetrates some of the skin, but
But still pops the line, because if not, that animal's just gonna die. Now if we can't finish the disentanglement, say weather's coming up or losing light, we can attach this buoy with a satellite tag coming out of it and come back to the animal at a later time, subsequent days, so on and so forth. This is the telemetry buoy that we've had within the network for so many years. It's 43 pounds. It's extremely heavy and very hard to move in rough seas. This is our new telemetry buoy coming online that the Nature Conservancy helped design. That is 17 pounds. Very grateful for that difference. And it uses a different satellite system. So this is the Argo system, and unfortunately out here in Hawaii we have a shadow for Argo satellites from about 11 to 4. It's very unfortunate. So if we don't get to the whale by 11 a.m., we're not going to find the whale. Okay? That system uses iridium, a lot more satellites, a lot less holes. So is anyone a hiker and uses like Garmin inReaches or anything like that? That's the same system. So you can always send messages out. And the great thing about this buoy is we can like put it to sleep at night when it's on the whale. And then when we get ready to go out to the whale the next morning, we can turn it down. Like you can turn the amount of hits that you want. If you want it every hour, if you want it every 30 minutes, if you want it every 5 minutes. So the closer we get to the whale, the higher frequency we turn up on those hits. Now, going forward, this was a case off Maui, a mom and calf, entangled mom. Now there are a couple kind of golden childs of disentanglement, and one is ropeless fishing gear, or on-demand fishing gear. And it isn't ropeless at all, it's just, do you remember that buoy and that inline I was talking about? It is now attached to the pot in kind of a trap door, okay? There's a communication device on the pot and a communication device on the boat. When the fisherman is ready to haul his pot, he just presses for cover, clink, and a trap door opens, and then that buoy and inline floats to the surface. So instead of that being in the water for like 60 days, it's in the water for 60 seconds, okay? It's being tested off Massachusetts, it's been tested off Canada and Australia. There's some fisheries that are already using it. It is very expensive gear. That is the only thing, because there's not a lot of places making it. There are a lot more places coming online to make it, and we're hoping that as that price point comes down, more fisheries will move to this, okay? Weaker rope and breaking strength. This was from New England Aquarium. They've been working on that. And very tricky, that one. They have installed on the East Coast something called weak contrivances. Did you guys ever have those finger traps when you were little? So they have now required fishermen out east to put that every 60 feet in the line, kind of as a weak point in the line. So if the animal gets entangled, hopefully it will break. Unfortunately, so I went up out east to help this past July. This was the first time since the weak contrivances have gone in that I've been to work with them. And unfortunately, when we were working on the whale and kegging it, we would think we're free because we just broke free and now we're like drifting. But instead of getting the gear off the animal, it just broke at the weak contrivance. So then we'd have to go back and pick up the line again with gear still on the animal. So it made it very, very tricky for us. And then out here in Hawaii, one of the things we're working on is funding for the removal of illegal fads, because right now if we see one out there, we can mark it, but we don't have anyone that can go and pick it up. Okay, a lot of times it's heavy stuff on the bottom, there's no boats that can haul it. So unfortunately that's something that we're working on. So just give you an idea of the Hawaii effort. So we have 9 trained teams, full caches of equipment on all the islands. Our cache here lives at the Captain Zodiac office in Honolulu Harbor. We use their boats for response over on this island, and they graciously donate it to us. We have 20 responders that are trained at higher levels, but if there's any entangled whale on any of the islands that is not Maui, Ed or myself will fly over, okay, and help out. We did lose a whole cache of gear in the Lahaina fires. Just want to give out to a shout out to the Center for Coastal Studies. They replaced that for us, so thanks to them. 2002 to the present, so more than 200 responses mounted. Gear removed from 41 whales, I need to change that. Represents about a 50% success rate. If we can get to the whale, it's much higher. It jumps up to about 80. But unfortunately, we lose the whales a lot because they go into the wind line, and we just never see them again. Gear types that we see, again, why I highlight the fixed gears, because the majority of it is going to be fixed gear that we see. Out here, about 72%. Out east, they probably see that jump up to about 85% fixed gear. 14 local cases, 20 from Alaska, DC, and that's only what we can identify. A lot of times, when the gear gets here, we can't get the numbers off of it. We don't know. There's not a trap involved anymore because they've carried it such a long distance. All of that is gone. Okay. A unique thing out here in Hawaii is also whale shark disentanglement. So I also have spoken to this group before about whale sharks. I'm part of a Hawaii Uncharted research collective, and we study whale sharks here in the islands. We are seeing a lot of animals show up with this very, very thick gear. Okay, that's about 5 to 7 inch hauser gear. We don't know where they're getting it, but we have now designed kind of special tools, thanks to Bob Gladden, he was helping us with it. A big climbing carabiner. Have you guys ever seen that? Like when people climb like El Cap in Yosemite, they have all the lines hooked to it. We fashioned big knives on the inside of that, so we can dive down, hook it to it, have a shuttle line and a sea anchor or buoy behind it, and then it will eventually cut through. We let the animal swim off. We're never going to see that line buoy and like grab or the cutting tool again, but at least the animal's free. So something that's a little cheaper that we can fashion. So a couple things that's really cool that we're working on is actually cutting whales free using a drone. And we've been working on it for a couple seasons now. And this is just showing our initial trials of just trying to attach the grapple to a whale via drone. So say like our approaches are burned, we get there, the animal wants nothing to do with this. Hopefully the drone can at least pull over a telemetry tag or something of that sort that can attach it for us. And now we're actually switched just the regular grapple to a cutting tool. And after a couple of years of trials, it is now added in our permit from NOAA Fisheries that if we have the case that warrants it, we can't get close to the animal, we can attempt to make a cut with the drone. So, pretty excited about that. It may not happen for 5 years, we may not get a case that warrants it, but you never know. It's a tool in the toolbox, which is great. We're suction cup tagging animals, especially compromised animals, but we're dropping it via drone. So you can see this right here. Drone flies over, boop, drops the tag on the animal doesn't even know we're there. It's kind of great. We're also, this is a video of a drop that we did this past year with an entangled animal. So we want to understand what these animals are saying in the water column, the energetics of a response, and in response to us working on them. So here we go, just plopped it on the escort, see the entanglement. This was Pacific Northwest here. And he was just hanging out with mom and calf. We responded to this animal like multiple times. Unfortunately didn't get him free. But got this data from him and didn't burn an approach because the drone just flew over and dropped it on him. Okay. So I like to highlight this. This is a gobbler guillotine again. Gobbler guillotine we use a lot out east. It hasn't been used much here in the Hawaiian network, but since I have experience with it, I'm training the team here. So this was of us last year after Halloween. We put the line and an apple on it, and we were taking turns driving past it and trying to shoot it. I really wanted the apple, and I finally got it. But, you know, just another tool in the toolbox, right? We have so many knives. We have probably 20 knives, you know, 20 different applications for tools, thicknesses of line. And if it requires it, now the team is trained to use the gobbler guillotine here. So another fun little tidbit. Let's see, did I break this thing? I probably did. Okay, well, let's see. I just broke my little clicker. Just a couple of videos real fast to show you guys from last year. This was that same animal that we dropped the suction cup tag on. This was a drone video. When we originally got this call, it was like an hour before sunset. So I'm driving the boat, Ed's on the pole. It was extremely difficult because we couldn't see the animal because of the glare. Luckily we had our colleague that had his drone, and we said, can you put it up? And he put a monitor up next to me at the helm so I could see. So I was able to get a little closer, but this animal just hated any boat being next to it. This was the one pass we got on it, and the knife just skipped the line, unfortunately. And that happens sometimes. It just popped right over it and just like millimeters over. Hopefully we see this animal again. I mean, they can, you know, especially because this wasn't a tight entanglement or anything, we could see him next year. We just never know. But wanted to end on a couple good notes, show you a couple videos from successes. So this was that photo earlier that I showed you of the mom and baby that were entangled. So calves present a little bit of a difficulty for us if mom's entangled. Obviously they're happy-go-lucky and, you know, bouncing around, but that's not as easy when you have a knife on a long pole. So we're using something called the flying knife here. So you hook it in and the animal swims away from you, but you're letting the knife go with it, and the knife is tied to a line that is tied to a buoy. So you can let the animal swim off with it and the cut will be made. So right here, he hooks it in. Okay, Ed's clearing the pole, so now the knife has come off, going with the animal. Ed's clearing the pole. And watch Lee right here in the front. You see there's tension on the line, and here in a second he's just going to jerk back. Right there. That's when the cut is made. Okay? Mom is free, gear off of her. So this is her after. You can see the little scar and indentation around her, like right behind her blowhole, but completely gear free, which was great. And then this was an Alaska case recently. I just like to highlight this. We flew up to Dutch Harbor. Ed flew up to Dutch Harbor to help. This animal was anchored hog-tied, so through the mouth and around the tail. He's using something that he has fashioned called the exoscope. It's actually a live stream camera that he can look through glasses, like Google glasses, and you can see like what you're looking at underneath the water. You can also attach a monitor to it, so then the helmsman can see what's going on as well. So this is live video of it. This is Sadie is holding the monitor for the helmsman, and Ed is working the pole. And here in just a second, he's going to make the cut. You're going to see Sadie get very excited. He just set him on, and she's telling him what's going on. And then cut made. See how happy she was? That was very cute. And this is the animal after, deer free. So you can see those indentations on the fluke. You can see it's still curved a little bit. That's something called capture myopathy. And that's because he had been stuck like that for a little bit. Sometimes when we see animals with capture myopathy, we'll just kind of poke them a little bit with the pole, kind of like slapping a horse on the butt. Be like, hey, you're free, go. And they figure it out in a little bit. They'll straighten back out and start swimming normally. And then this is one of my favorites. This was here off Maui. Just a quick show of boop, cut made. Whale goes away.
It's great.
Yeah. So great job by all, but just want to add some acknowledgments. This was right here down south, kind of near Red Hill, last year. Case that the animal actually threw the gear itself by the time we got there, which was great. But want to thank everyone. Obviously a lot of acknowledgments because I work for the government. And then yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And this is our NOAA hotline, so that will go directly to me and Ed. Obviously you have to go through the prompts, be like whale, turtle, whatever. But if you click entangled whale, it will go to Ed or myself. We always swap off the hotline. So yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, go ahead.
I noticed you put a diver in the water with whale sharks to cut off the entanglement. Do you ever do that with whales?
We do not, because people have been injured that way. And one kick of their tail and they're way. With whale sharks, because they don't have to come to the surface to breathe.
And they're slow.
Yeah, and they're slower. It's very hard to get to them. So you have to kind of put a diver in. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, first I really admire your work, so thank you so much for that. I have like the silliest question, and this is a product of like seeing these sweet stories on social media that almost personify an animal, and so I'm just wondering if you've ever experienced any acknowledgement from an animal that you have disentangled.
I wish. They're usually trying to kill me because I'm tugging on the lines that are hurting them.
Yeah.
One tried this summer and did a very good job of it. And you know, we have 3 people on the inflatable, spooked someone so much that was working with us that they're leaving the network. So we don't normally see those things. Sometimes those videos are edited a little bit to portray something. But normally we're tugging on them pretty good, and they're associating us with pain. So much so that out east, because we see those animals all the time, that ones that we've disentangled, when they hear our engines, they're like, hell no. And like run away from us. They're like, nope, we don't like you guys. And sometimes the animals, I've disentangled one like 4 different times. Like same individual, different entanglements. So, yeah.
Could you give some details of what happened this summer that spooked the colleague?
Is the camera on?
It can be.
Any question? Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, I will get back to that. Let me answer some questions and I will get back to that. Yeah.
Could you just repeat the question?
Oh, repeat the question. She was asking about the case this summer that was a little scary. Yes, I'm happy to share that. Camera's off?
Any other questions?
Oh yeah. Yes, back there.
You were talking about like the different like levels, I guess, of the whale rescuer. I don't know how official levels term is, but how do people like progress in those? Do you need a marine biology degree to like get involved? Or?
No, not at all. So that's a great question. So she was just asking about the levels of responders and how to be trained and go forward with that. So with that, we have an online level 1 course that you can do that basically formally puts you in the network. It just puts you in our system. And then every fall we do trainings. on the island. So right now I'm over here doing the training. We did one today. We were out there and had 12 responders with us, getting trained. We're doing that tomorrow, so it's usually a 2-day training from about like 8 to 2:30-ish, so it's a full day out there. And we usually have people do that multiple times and do those trainings over several years. And then say I get a call on Maui, and I will put out a text to the team here that we have trained and say, who's available? I'm coming over. And usually the first 4 or 5 people that respond are out there with us. So happy to take people interested in the network. Something that will really, really help you in the network is having a lot of boat experience. So whether that be driving or working on whale watch boats and knowing whale behavior, that is very, very helpful. So I always tell people out there, like, I want to gain more experience, but you know, I have to work and do stuff. I'm like, work on a whale watch boat. That will help a lot. Great question. Yes, sir.
You mentioned right whales being tricky, dangerous. Do you think that's, and I'm guessing, or asking for a hypothesis, do you think that is kind of the nature of the beast, or have they learned from being hunted so extensively?
That's a great question. I would have loved to have seen them back prior to hunting to be able to answer that. I was talking to someone today that's going to like Argentina to swim with southern rights, and I was like, good luck. But she said they're pretty docile down there, and it could be that they're habituated and
Or they weren't hunted as heavily?
or they weren't hunted as heavily. But I don't know, because when I went to Australia and was talking to my colleagues down there, they're like, we hate working on southern rights too because they're terrifying. And it's like, so that's a common sentiment with them. But I don't know, because I haven't seen the ones off Argentina to be like, maybe they're not all jerks. Sorry to the 300 that are left.
All right, thank you.
Yes.